You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world. Only on WQHS Radio.
So hi everyone and welcome back to another episode of Changing Reality. I'm your host, Harsha, and welcome one, welcome all. If you guys are recurring viewers, we've missed you. Welcome back to another episode. If you're new viewers, where have you been all my life? You are at the right place right now, finally. But anyway, we really appreciate you guys tuning in. For you guys who are new to the show, Changing Reality is a space that enables us to meet and feature phenomenal people from all walks of life, who are in essence changing their own reality. And we'll be hanging out and interviewing phenomenal people from social change makers, entrepreneurs, business owners, artists, musicians, and inspiring individuals from all across the world in hopes that we'll be able to pick out a little bit of nuggets of wisdoms from their journey that will shorten our own learning curves, inspire us to take that leap that we're looking for, and at the same time help us, of course, create our reality. And this show is something that is so special to me, and it's something that I wanted to do because I feel like there are a lot of people out there who make waves in the lives of the people around them. They do phenomenal things, and I'm super passionate about learning how they were able to do that, learning what made them who they are, so that hopefully we can replicate that in small ways as well. And to show you the power of stories and why it's important to have conversations like this, I actually founded my whole life, my whole business on the power of these stories and conversations. I actually founded and run a youth movement called Ascendance back at home in Malaysia, where we're from, which today works with 35,000 students across 28 countries, collaborates with our Malaysian Ministry of Education as well as global education partners to provide an alternative education platform for any student out there who wants to change their reality. So we work with students from elementary all the way up to college through various sessions, programs, experiential learning activities that help them discover their passion, learn about themselves and the world around them, and at the same time start to create their own careers that create meaningful impact not just for themselves, but for those around them as well. And we've been fortunate to date to not only work with these 35,000 students, but with 970 over communities, and have incubated countless number of student-run projects and social enterprises run by kids as young as 8 to 25 years old. And the essence of this, the reason we've been able to do all of that is stories. It's kind individuals who've been willing to share their time, share their thoughts, their experiences, so that other people can learn from them and learn what makes us human in a way, what makes us able to succeed, able to follow our hearts. And just like that, I believe that this show will hopefully be the platform for some of you to experience something similar, so that you too can go out there and start seeing what needs to be done for you to achieve the goals that you want in your happiness, health, career, and passion. And that this can springboard you to where you need to be. So once again, if you have any questions, if there's anything that you guys want to talk about, let us know in the chat below, and we'll take it as many as we can. So today's speaker is someone truly phenomenal. If you talk about the power of stories, she is probably the most powerful person in, I would say, at least my sphere of amazing Ivy League students in a sense, because she's someone who has a powerful story herself, and at the same time is someone who loves stories too. So she actually is someone who I would say has taken the world by storm through simply pursuing her dreams. Now, many of us dream for ourselves. We have things that we want to accomplish, careers that we want to do in a sense sometime in the future. But she's actually changed the reality around her to be able to live all of those dreams. She's someone who dreamt of being an author at age 6. And from there, has gone on to have a phenomenal career, and today has 2 book deals under her belt, with her debut novel just out in the summer called The Heart of the Deal. Prior to that, she also lived a dream that I think many Penn students that I know have as well, where she actually graduated from Dartmouth University. She went from intern to vice president at Goldman Sachs just by the age of 26. And today, she lives all of these amazing things, and shares her story on the world stages, from TEDx conferences, articles on Business Insiders, and so many others. So hopefully adding to her phenomenal list of media appearances and achievements will be a little footnote that is her interview on this show. So today, let's hear from the amazing Lindsay MacMillan on her journey from student, phenomenal career in finance, to author, and welcoming her onto the show.
Thank you so much, Harsha. What an absolutely gorgeous introduction. And I only hope I can live up to half of that. So thank you so much for having me. Super exciting.
Well, if they want to know the phenomenal things, they should go and read the Business Insider article. This is for the deets, all right?
But this is the behind the scenes, exactly.
Yeah, the behind the scenes, like the show where you get to yell at anyone you want, and I don't know, let all that stress out. But we really do appreciate you being on the show. As I said, you are someone who's so inspiring. As a little girl who wanted to be an author, who loved writing and stories, and I know so many other people, not just at Penn but around the world, who probably have that dream as well, but have no idea where to get there. And you did it. I mean, sure, you're only 26, there's a whole life ahead of you, I know, but to an extent, you've achieved at least a slimmer of that dream that so many people every day wish to accomplish. So thank you so much for being on the show.
No, absolutely. And I just wrapped up my 3-week book tour. So this is a really beautiful event to have as I'm kind of like coming down from that. Having to be on 24/7, and I'm now back in my hometown in Michigan and have been enjoying some quieter days by the lake, swimming and relaxing. So I'm really excited to tune in here. And like you said, I think so many of us we're really versatile humans, right? And we have so many sides to us. And I think sometimes the world can try to put us in a box. You're this or you're that. You're either a creative person or you're a corporate person, you're an author or you're an investment banker. And I hope what my story and kind of what my life can show people is that we can embrace all of the different parts of us. The fact that I was in finance made me a better author. The fact that I was a creative writer, made me better in my corporate job as well. So I think it's kind of like embracing those dichotomies and really the fullness of the human range here.
No, beautifully said. And I think just kind of zooming into your story and where it starts, I read somewhere that you wanted to be an author since age 6. You had all of those "what do you want to be" posters that you hung up as 6-year-olds do, in a sense. Tell me a little bit about why this was a goal for you. Like, why even think about it? Did you watch a documentary about an author and think like, that this sounds interesting? Did you love reading, or did you just hate reading so much you're like, I can do a better job? I'm 6 years old, and I'm sure that I could write better than this, in a sense. So where did this spark start?
I think it probably started with my mom reading stories before bed to my brother and me. So from a really young age, The Phantom Toll Booth, Little Women, Berenstain Bears books, kind of like the whole range. And I think
6, but okay.
I know she started us young, and then also Harry Potter was coming out around then, and I had a big brother, so he was reading the book. So of course I was trying to, read the books in first grade too. And I was a pretty shy little kid, but I remember asking my first grade teachers, kind of plucking up the courage and saying, I wrote a short story, a Halloween short story in my spare time. Like, could I read it to the class? And they gave me the opportunity to sit in front of the class of 25 students at my public school and just read the story. And I think that was kind of like the first glimpse of realizing, like you alluded to in your beautiful introduction, but the power of stories, not just for me to hold in my heart, but to get out into the world and, let it touch other people's hearts and just think differently, feel differently. Not everybody is going to love what you write. Not everybody is going to think it's the best thing in the world, but hopefully they can come away from it with some kind of different perspective. And I think that is like how we expand compassion and expand our hearts on the really micro level that becomes scalable just with how many more people can reach it.
No, definitely. And I love the power of writing. As I said, as I alluded to as well, I always dreamt of being a writer as a kid. I used to do my sister's English homework because they used to give her better prompts on like what to write about. And I used to do it and send it to her teacher to mark and be like, oh, you write that. And I feel like one of the reasons why I loved it was because it expressed, or it enabled me to explore or reinvent myself in unique and fun ways. Like I felt like a little part of my soul was in every like 15-year-old drabble or thing that I put out. For your perspective, in a sense, when was the first time you wrote a story or something that made you really feel like, oh gosh, this is good, this is like something that I'm in love with, in a sense? It could be at 6. I don't doubt your talent, in a sense, but when was the time that you wrote something that really truly resonated with you and felt that a part of you was being put out there on the paper?
Yeah, I would say the first big project and taste of that was when I was 18. So it was the summer before I went off to college, and I wrote my first full-length fiction manuscript, and it was 450 pages. And it was a time in my life when my parents were splitting up. I was going through a lot of turmoil. I was also, about to go to college and kind of leave one world behind. And I really think that I connected so much with it because I used the power of fiction to write about a protagonist who was in some ways going through similar life experiences to I was. So her parents were also splitting up. She was going to college. She was falling in love for the first time. But it let me also, like you said, with kind of this reinvention, it let me have that creative freedom to just play with fiction and really I think in the past I had mostly written memoir or short stories, but the full length of a novel just really gave me this escapism. And at the same time, in this cool way, it also brought me closer to my own story. So even though I wasn't writing memoir and I wasn't writing nonfiction, I think that the power of fiction is actually, it can put this distance between the story and our real lives, and it kind of lets us have this mirror. So I totally fell in love with being able to express my life through fiction, and then really and how this personal situation becomes universal. So I think that's also what stories can do. And then I went to Dartmouth and took all the creative writing classes and worked on that manuscript and several others. But I think without that summer before college experience, I have a hard time thinking that my book would have just come out and that my next one would be coming out. Because even though the first ones never got published, it lit me on fire in that way and showed me not only can I start something, I can finish it, and it might not be published yet, but we're going in the right direction and my heart is fully in it.
It's nice to know you were insane at 18 years old itself and were able to write 450 pages. How did you even concentrate on a laptop screen for that long? I do not know, but that is phenomenal and in itself an achievement, which if you ever want to publish it, I would love to have the first read it, just saying.
That would be fun to go back. I'm toying with it.
Okay, all right. I just like to take credit on that, but no, but tell us a little bit about your time in college in a sense, because a phenomenal summer. I would have always kind of not expected life to get better after writing 450 pages of a novel, in the sense that would be the peak of my life if that was ever possible. But for you, in a sense, moving into college, and it was kind of reflecting on a time that was a pivot in your life, and you were writing about it, you were at the same time experiencing it. Tell me about that time in your life. How was it first going to college? How was it making that transition with everything going around and this outlet is writing as well?
Yeah, so I grew up here in small town Michigan, where I've recently moved back to. But for me, going off to Dartmouth was a big jump. I didn't know anybody there. No one in my family had gone. It was no one from my high school had ever actually gotten into Dartmouth. So it was felt like a big step and spreading my wings. And I really wanted to go. But I was also pretty scared and terrified. And I think one of the reasons I've always loved writing is I was never bullied in school or anything like that, really. But I always felt a little bit on the outside. I'd never quite fit into this group or that group or this clique or being invited to all the sleepovers. And I think writing is just such a beautiful way to pour yourself in and make friends with the characters, make friends with yourself as you go. And so at Dartmouth, I think came out of my shell a bit socially and was in all of these new experiences, in all of these new classes. And I think I felt a bit of the pressure, self-induced largely, but also kind of with going to an Ivy League school. It's kind of get on the economics track, because we were liberal arts, but that was kind of the business, finance, consulting, track there. And so I took those classes. I liked them and I found it stimulating, but then I also really stumbled upon more of the creative writing department when I had this manuscript that I'd written, and I realized I could workshop that in the classes, and then I could write new stuff. And that to me, I think, was a big turning point of realizing, I think it's so, when you find that thing in life that just comes easily to you, and I'm not saying writing always comes easily to me as far as the day-to-day, but I was so motivated to see it through. I was so passionate about it and didn't feel like I was doing schoolwork when I was writing chapters versus my economic stuff. You know, I had my color-coded notes and study guides, and that was up in the library for so many hours, but it felt like work. And so I think I kind of let my heart guide me more towards also really expanding in the creative writing department. But even then, it was like there wasn't a clear path to publishing. I think Dartmouth did so well as far as teaching me about writing and honing the craft and storytelling. But I don't think academic institutions do the best job of really connecting that dream with the reality of, okay, how do you make this commercial? How do you publish it? How do you build a career of it? And so that's why kind of when I came out of Dartmouth, I wasn't breaking in yet as far as pitching literary agents or publishers. Like I hadn't gotten traction there. So I thought, let me start out on the more conventional career path. I have my foot in the door in this great investment bank and try to keep writing as on the side. But I think the risk is whenever we keep things on the side, it's like it's very easy to let it die, or it's very easy to kind of let the world tell you, oh, you know, that was just a college dream. Oh, you know, you have to be realistic. You have to grow up. You can't make a career of that. So I kind of had to just be the voice in my head through, you know, from high school to college to Wall Street that said, okay, this is more than just a pipe dream. This is more than just a side passion. Like, let's actually turn this into a career.
You know, I think that the beautiful thing about you is that you are insanely talented at antithetical things. So yes, the creative side of it, the finance side of it, they're two completely different things. And yet you seem to be amazing at both of them. I'm not saying this. It's the fact that, you know, VP at Goldman Sachs by 26. I mean, that's a pretty...
I was actually 28.
So 28? Oh, I'm so sorry that it was 28 and not
I'm aging myself.
What a big difference. But all right, okay, but 28, and that itself I think goes to show. And that thing that you said was so important, that you reach a part. I think like college is great, but you have to make a decision after that, and you have to do something after that. It feels at least like there's a deadline to do something and to make kind of the next swerve in your life at that point. And many of them, that's where dreams, I would say, that you hear these horror stories of people saying, I'm going to go and do this for a little while, and then while I work on my writing or my music or something else, and then that something else dies somewhere.
I know, that would scare me so much when I would hear that. People would be like, oh yeah, I thought I was going to be a writer, and now 25 years has gone by and I haven't, you know, written anything. And I'd be like, no.
And if you were a totally average person, like who did averagely at your job, like and didn't progress that fast, maybe I would believe you and think, you know what, Lindsay spent a lot of time writing. But you progressed in the career and you progressed in your writing. How did you do that? How did you do both at that same time?
Yeah, looking back, I still kind of am like, how did I do both so intensely at the same time? I mean, I think part of it is that adrenaline that you have coming out of school in your early 20s. But my first couple years, I did not write as much. I was doing on the buy side, but I was doing private credit and equity investing. So I was more on deal flow oriented, which meant I was working more on call 24/7, basically. You get staffed on deals and you don't know if you get your weekend. That was not a good environment for me for my mental wellness. I always was the person who would do the work as far ahead as I could. I never pulled all-nighters in college, and it was not really that structure. And at the same time, I wasn't really having that sacred time to carve out and write and know that I would be able to devote to my writing. It was very up and down. So I felt like combination just for my, you know, mental well-being and not feeling, I knew I wasn't like passionate about the work. I found it interesting enough, but it wasn't my calling. So for me to devote my full life to that was not in alignment with what I felt like my, you know, broader soul calling was. So I knew something needed to change. And then I moved really to the marketing and brand and content strategy side of Goldman. So at that point, that was still when I was an analyst, and then I made associate, and then I went to London, but still kind of in that world, and made VP. And I think like from I was at Goldman 6 years. So the last 4 of those years, I really was working quite normal hours, right? Like I was working like 50-ish hour weeks, which is really good for Wall Street. I was working from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. ish, check in on the weekends a little bit, but I knew that I had this schedule, and that worked really well with how I thought about fitting my writing into it. Because my investment banking friends, oh yeah, go on.
No. Go ahead. You're much more interesting than my stupid questions.
No, you're good. I was just saying, like, my investment banking friends were probably, working more hours at work, right? But I was like taking some of those hours and allocating it towards my writing. I took a lower salary or lower bonus with that like in mind as well. So there are certainly trade-offs involved, but I just felt so much more energized and so much more myself when I was really devoting a few hours a day. So I called it like my Hannah Montana double life. I was going to this like coffee shop across from the Goldman Sachs headquarters that opened at 6 a.m. And I would write there for 2 or 3 hours. And then I would like put on my blazer and go from creative Lindsay to corporate Lindsay and go back into the office. And the interesting thing is I didn't really open up about my creative side and my love of writing at work. And this is something I'm curious your thoughts on it. And even like feels like Gen Z is so much better now at like this idea of authenticity and like bringing your full self. But I just felt, I don't know, I felt like it was like this part of me that on the one hand, I didn't even want people like asking, so is your book done? Like, when's it going to get published? And then also being like, oh, are you not focused on your work because you're writing all the time? And oh, you write stories like with love and romance. Like, does that mean you're too girly or emotional? And like all these thoughts kind of going around. So I kind of dealt with it by literally looking at it as 2 different careers, which was not in perfect harmony all the time. Like sometimes I definitely felt burned out or not motivated in my day job when I wanted to spend all my time writing, or if I would be like in a writing slump and work would be going well. There is kind of like that constant push and pull, but it definitely, I'm like so glad that I had my day job as I was writing, because it gave me this great career advancement, financial stability. And candidly, like I was able to absorb all these stories. I was able to then portray a woman on Wall Street and help women in business feel seen and empowered in a way I wouldn't have been able to do had I not lived it. And I was also able to learn all these business skills that helped me pitch agents, break in, get publishers, and get like a really successful sales and marketing plan and high profile PR. So it's definitely not for the faint of heart, but if your side thing, and it because you juggle a lot of things too, but like if what you're doing on top of work is what lights you up, I just think there's this abundant energy source that will keep you going.
And I think the testament to for us to notice that okay, you were committed to both equally was the fact that you were like, I will wake up at 6 a.m. to do this, and just kind of like, was this the coffee shop like that you?
This was one in London. Yeah. So I put this on because I wrote in all these coffee shops around New York and then London. Yeah. I mean, I was waking up actually before 5 a.m. to get downtown, get dressed, get downtown, like write, and then get in flow. But the days that I wouldn't do that, I would just feel so off. So like with some people, I also, like to work out or eat right and stuff. But if I don't write, it feels like part of my balance and routine is really off kilter. I'm super irritable and miserable to be around.
Like, what's wrong, Lindsay? Are you sick? Exactly. Are you unwell? Right this morning.
Yeah.
But no, I think that is testament to if something really is your passion. But one of the things that I thought was incredible is that you did this 3 hours in the early mornings and probably a lot more in the day. You looked at it as a career, even beyond before you got the book deal, before you got the literary agent and all of that. And it's one thing when you have a book deal and you say, I'm going to devote my time to writing my next book, or I have an agent, then you devote some time to writing. But it's a little bit harder to see something ahead of time in a sense and essentially prepare for something when you don't even know if it's going to work out. And you, again, wrote every day, almost every day for years in a sense. and then it's kind of you manifested your reality in a sense from that repetitive action, from kind of that focus that you had towards it. When you were writing and before you got the agent, before you got kind of the literary deals, what actually made you do it? Was it just something that you did because it relieved you, it made you happy, or was it something you did with a goal in mind, or a combination of the both? But what made you consistently do that, even in times where you may not have seen the end in mind?
Yeah, that is such a beautiful articulation of it, because people kind of now look at me and, oh yeah, you 28, you have 2 book deals. Like, of course you left your job to go do this. But like you said, there were years before when I did not have even an agent. And I had basically written and pitched essentially 5 books that never got published. And in the midst of that, like, yeah, now we're not on the other side, but we're far enough along that you can see, yes, this was leading. And now
it's a nice story now, but yeah.
It's a great stepping stone. Yeah. But there were many days, months, and years where I genuinely questioned if it was ever going to happen. I would call my mom so many times, be like, just crying, like if I would get another rejection, or if I was just feeling so drained, like, why am I wasting putting all this time? Like, I really wasn't prioritizing relationships. I was meeting really nice guys and just had no energy basically for dating. I, had really close friendships, but some of them, basically my friend group got smaller, which isn't all bad, but there are certainly, like, I had to really prioritize writing at a time when, from the outside looking in, people might have been like, why are you making that such a focus? And are you kind of insane? Like, are you not taking a message that you just shouldn't, this isn't really your path? Like, you're getting all these rejections and all this. I think what kept me going, one, just like that internal fire and just knowing that this is tied to my calling. And it's a bit hard to sometimes explain that to other people, and I don't think we should have to, but I think it's kind of this litmus test where you say, like, am I, even if, these end goals and tangible markers don't happen, like, will I be joyful and glad that I will have written these books to pass down, to share just with my close friends and family and myself. And for me, I felt like absolutely I needed to be doing this. And then the other thing was on the feedback side, like the feedback on my writing, when I would get agents and publishers to actually take a look, even though they were saying no at the time, the feedback was very strong on the writing itself. They were more concerned with the packaging of it, the marketing of it, where it fits on the shelf. Oh, this is too much between genres, or, we don't have actually, this category isn't big enough right now, like, come back later, blah, blah, blah. So it really felt to me like if I kept going, I was making forward progress. And I could look back and see each time I was getting a little closer. And I was also in New York City and networking in the evenings and on the weekends with just anyone I could. I would go to other author events and ask them about their publishing journey. I would reach out to Dartmouth alums who were in that world and, just try to get a coffee and learn any literary agent connections. So I felt like I wasn't at a standstill. I was moving forward. It just wasn't a lightning speed, but it was enough to really kind of give me that confidence that it wasn't just, some crazy American Idol contestant who is tone deaf, who is just insisting on devoting hours of her day to this. So it felt like it was this kind of uncomfortable distance where it felt within reach, but still so far away. And that's a very painful place to be, because you know that it could happen, but you have no idea if it will happen. And so that's why, and we can talk more about it later, but like what I feel like is one of my purposes for going through really this decade-long journey is helping other people bridge that gap between where they are now and where they want to be. But yeah, I think fundamentally you have to make sure, and I had to make sure this was really something that was going to be, like, I had to be internally motivated and internally driven to achieve it, because if I were just doing it so I could, hold up this book at the end and say, hey, look, I wrote a book, that would not be worth all of the incremental years. So you really do have to find joy in the process itself.
Oh, phenomenally said. tell me also a little bit about the first time you or the time that you actually got the agent, the time that, I mean, we spoke about the stuff which I wanted to speak about, which was making me wonder. So now let's talk about happier times. So you get the agent, you get the book deal in a sense. How did that start happening? Did you wake up one day with like 50 emails in your inbox saying this novel is going to be a big hit, let me represent you? I know you were fielding offers, but tell me, what was it like, how, as you transitioned into kind of that phase? I'm a believer that there's a season for sowing, season for reaping. So there's times where you work hard, see nothing, and there's times where things come a little bit easier in a sense because you've done the groundwork. So tell me about that second part of life in a way, so we can make the audience feel a bit better.
No, absolutely. I think it definitely was a season of reaping after a long sowing. And I ended up having a few different offers of representation for this novel. It was originally called The Volatile Love Market, all about the ups and downs of dating and friendship.
Love it. Yes.
Now it's the heart of the deal. And I could tell, I think it was a couple things. One, I knew I had more of a network, so I would actually get people to look at it and take it more seriously when it was done. And two, it just felt like the writing itself was stronger. It felt like it was timely. It felt like it was really relevant. I had a personal connection to the story, being a woman on Wall Street and shining light on, some of these gender biases that come across in the story. It's a love story, but it also hits on kind of like, these heavier themes of female empowerment and stepping off the conventional track and all of that. So I felt like it was the right book at the right time, and all of the trial and error up to that point really got people's attention right away. But then I love my agent so much, and I'm so grateful that I really just serendipitously found her. She was one I just cold outreached and cold queried, it's called. But someone from a bigger agency, I was really tempted to go with because of the brand name and everything. But they really wanted me to skew the story in the direction of the male character and his battle with depression and his perspective. And I felt very strongly this is the female's story. This is Ray's journey. And yes, dating and trying to love someone who battles depression and mental health challenges is a part of it. But it's really so much more than the guy's story. It was her whole holistic journey, not just in her love life, but in her career, in her friendships, and really just becoming the woman that she wanted to be in her 20s in New York. And so I think it's back to just trusting your intuition and your gut. And I just had such a good feeling with my agent, even though she was from a slightly smaller agency. I felt like I was so confident in her vision for the book. So we signed, I guess, in October of 2020. So I remember, but probably even aside from those ones, I got a different offer, which was my very first offer. And I remember that morning I was out on the back deck here just doing some yoga, and I was back in the pandemic with my mom, and my boyfriend was upstairs, and then I ran inside and I woke him up and I was like, I got an offer, because I saw the email in my inbox. And that was a wild moment, because even though I didn't end up signing with that agent, it was just such validation that, okay, this is going to happen. And then it was kind of like the floodgates opened a little bit and the others came in. So I'll never forget that day, because it feels so exciting when you feel like someone outside of your friends and family and professors just really believe in you and think that this book is going to be huge. And it's a cool feeling.
No, absolutely brilliant. And I have another moment I think that we can share a little bit about on our screen, which is when you actually got the book. And I think this is a nice photo of the box, arriving with the book in hand. Tell me how that felt, holding the book in your hand, with, after so many years of effort, in so many, I would say, hours put in the book itself. And then now finally it's at your doorstep, you have it in your hands. Tell me about that feeling, in a sense, and waking up that morning. Did you expect what you were going to see? Were you happy with the font? Tell us the story.
It was very surreal. It felt like a long time coming, because I was actually in London working for Goldman Sachs over there. I'm such a believer in life chapters, I guess, because I like to write novels. So I felt like the London chapter of my life was really important for me to explore. And move to London by myself without knowing anybody, work in a different culture, and absorb stories. My next book, my second book, is actually set in London. But all this to say, so my publisher wouldn't mail me the books abroad because they said the shipping was too much, which is fair, I guess. But I was like, come on, this is so many years.
Yeah.
Send me one book. But they sent a box of books to my mom's house here in Michigan. So we actually did a virtual reveal. I was in Barcelona visiting my very good friend, also ex-Wall Street artist. And I was walking down the street, and my mom FaceTimes me, and she's like, I have the boxes. And so she opens them up, and we're both squealing and just being little kids together. So that was a really special experience. And then when I finally actually got back to the States and got to open the box, it was very cool. I think like seeing my name on it and actually holding it. But I think when you're so close to it, you almost like I have to get out of my perfectionist head with it sometimes. Like I of course read it so many times to proofread it along with my editors and stuff. But once it was final, I almost didn't even want to touch it. Be like, okay, it's good enough. Like, get it out in the world, let other people experience it. But I think it's a beautiful cover. I originally sketched just like on a piece of lined paper that I wanted the stock market to be on the cover, and then the stock market mirroring the New York City skyline, because a big theme is like the volatility of the stock market mirrors the volatility of the relationship that the protagonist is in, which mirrors the volatility of the New York City skyline. So I knew I wanted those elements to come together. I had a little bit of I wasn't sure how I felt about the pink, but it's more salmony, but I do love it. And I'm so impressed so far with how many men are picking it up and having an experience with it, because the genre is called women's fiction, which is total BS. It's like, I can't stand that term because there's no such thing as men's fiction. It's just called fiction. Like, there's literally no category called men's fiction, and there's a big category called women's fiction. And, you know, society just expects that, naturally women will read and connect with stories with men characters, and they don't think the same of the flip side. So I have been, like so many Wall Street colleagues, male friends, all of them just kind of really strangers, just connecting and feeling seen, or at least relating to it in some way, or understanding the human mind and heart a little bit better. There are so many ways that I think that it can be valuable for all gender, all ages. So yeah, my reaction to the cover, like I really do love it, and I'm glad it's the color that it is. And just holding it in my hand, I still kind of like just stroke it as my little baby.
You should. It's legitimate. I've been reading the book on Google Books because I live halfway across the world, and shipping is expensive, as you said. And and I really like in the process of reading it, one thing that really struck me is simply the tone that you use in writing it. It is something that I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a teenager and I resonate with that. I don't think so. I think you're just talented in a way. But it's so real, the things that you say. Like there's one part which I remember was my favorite part, where I think it's early in the book, the protagonist is talking to her friends, and Ray is basically saying, I'm going to go mad if I see any more spreadsheets. And it's she gives this kind of like timeline for how her life should be. And she starts kind of like calculating backwards, and I was just like, this is hilarious, because it's so relatable that it hurts a little bit. And it is so funny because I just thought, for you to write something that immediately strikes a chord with me, someone you do not know, or at that time did not know at all, in a sense, and it was a complete stranger, means that you have hit a nerve that is probably salient in many people, that many people are experiencing in a way. And I would say that goes beyond gender, that goes beyond any other little box that we can fit ourselves in. It's a human problem that we are feeling in this generation, in this time, in this world. How did you do that? Where did you think, like how did you think, everyone's going through this, let me write this down? Was there a mathematical formula that you had to process, run the equations by? Like how do you predict what people are feeling?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, that is just such great validation, and just makes my heart sing as an author. That is really what you hope for. But I I really don't. People are like, who did you think about when you were writing the book? Who did you write the book for? And the reality is, I find it to be a little bit manufactured when I'm trying to write to please other people. And I had to fight this because I knew what the publishing industry wanted. Maybe I knew what would sell for them, but I had to write my truth, and I had to write this story as I felt it coming out of me. So I hoped that, other people would relate, but it's one of those situations where it's like this really personal, one person, one setting, one act, one depiction of it. And then I think through that, it becomes like the personal becomes really universal. But I think like the magic of this book is the relatability of it. I think it's how the publishing world, a lot of times they want you to have like one super sensational plot point, like one crazy thing, the alien attack, or like the super extreme mental health where there's a suicide, or there's,
everyone's
really
tragic backstory,
Exactly. Tragic backstory, really hard, like bad, like sexual assault at work, stuff like that. That's a hook. And I really pushed back on all of that. I said, I need this to be relatable. It's all about the subtlety of these little moments, the things that we are thinking as people growing up, trying to, fight this pressure that we feel from other people about how our life should look, the voice in our head that's saying we need to achieve this in our relationships by this timeline, this in our careers by this timeline. And just like you said, of like breaking out of boxes, it's the character's journey to do just that. It's been my journey to do just that. And I just felt very strongly that, like, if I looked at the people, not just my direct friends in New York, but anyone who has ever kind of like picked their head up and said, okay, wait, I'm in my 20s, or, even I've been impressed by even, teenagers reading it and having these thoughts of feeling like I have these goals for my life, but I really want to ultimately just live a fulfilling, truthful life that doesn't fit anybody else's expectations. Like, how do I kind of free myself of that, but still acknowledge like that the other pressures are there. And it's been so cool to feel that it has definitely struck a chord. And I think like back to the business analogies too, like there is a gap in the market for this. There are not that many books that feature strong women in finance, fiction, love story protagonists. There are not that many books that are just about that relatability of growing up and trying to, chart your own authentic life path. So I think what was originally perhaps something that publishers were nervous about with like, oh, is there a big enough hook? Is it, sensational enough? Now that's actually what is striking the chord with people. So it has been just really validating to, stay true to my instinct with it, and so rewarding to feel how it is connecting all across the world.
Very well said, and very well done in practice as well with how you've managed to get the book out. And I also wanted to talk a little bit about kind of your book tour. How is it like meeting the people who are reading the book, who are engaging with it? We see you here, I think, signing and having this amazing back and forth with the crowd. And again, you're definitely someone who's very vibrant, who's put a lot of soul in this. And then a book tour is a magical experience that I think it's brilliant that you have, in a sense, because after the pandemic, going out there, meeting people on the ground itself is a strange notion. And to do it for a project that you love and that you've put so much work in is probably another surreal feeling and another benchmark in the world or the life of an author. What was that experience like for you, traveling space to space, bookshop to bookshop, and meeting the people who have and will be reading your book?
It's incredible. It's kind of this shift where you say this book is mine, and then you say this book is ours, and you really let it go into the world, and you let everyone else have their own experience with it. Just people coming up and connecting with it on such a deeply personal level, from the man saying this helped him connect with his daughter more, to the women in their 20s saying, I thought I was the only one thinking these thoughts, this would have saved me thousands on therapy, to women my grandmother's age who say, this is such a cool glimpse into a younger generation and into life in New York, or I used to live in New York and this brought me back to that stage. So it is so beautiful. And I also think like the way I've tried to go about it is to reinvent the book tour, because yes, the book, the actual bookstore events can be great, and I love bookstores so much. And there's also a large segment of my audience that doesn't naturally convene in bookstores. They are more entrepreneurial, they are more business minded, they are gathering in their co-working spaces, in their yoga studios, in their friends' backyard gardens, in their corporations. And so that's really where I had about half of the events in actual bookstores, and then half in these more, out of the box modern locations where I would partner with women founders or people in my target audience who I felt like might be left out or a little bit. And I think like that's such a big opportunity for authors to expand and really go. It's like just a kind of direct to consumer marketing strategy that plays out in the in-person events. And I think particularly for a story like this, where it features a woman in business and is so particular to that world, like it is hopefully broader to anybody, in any life stage in industry. But for people who work in business or finance, like they are freaking out about it. It's like, I have never felt like, so seen, like I didn't know anyone else like took toilet naps in the bathroom stalls at work and things like that. Just these little details where it's like, this is so particular to kind of that experience. And I really wanted to meet that segment where they were too. And I really identify more as an entrepreneur than an author, because I'm not trying to just stay in my lane and just write books. I'm trying to bring it to market, launch a product, build a brand. And I think that's why I felt so energized by the book tour, was kind of this hybrid and this combination of the old and the new, and how, one can really strengthen the other.
And the very cool part is you seem to be bringing in, and I saw that you did an entire interview somewhere on just the marketing side of the book, which is just, I would say, a perfect amalgamation of your experiences in your career, again, in the marketing communication side, and bringing that into what you're doing now. Tell us a little bit about how that nuance or that very subtle nuance between author, and I think the term used is authorpreneur, which I love, and I'll steal when the next time I meet an authorpreneur. But essentially, it is a fine, or I would say it's really a fine line. It is a very different kind of a approach to having a book, in a sense, as you said. It's not just about staying in your lane. It's not just about writing. It's about thinking through the other aspects of it, from the marketing, from who is it reaching, from crafting those strategies. I know you've got sponsors, you've got these additional venues. How does someone out there who is an author or is someone who is in a role where they're not expected to do the marketing, how do they start thinking about these kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of a big calculus with why I quit my Goldman job to go all in, because I said, okay, I'm not just going all in to write the books. I'm going all in to build a business here, build a brand, and just, try and, use all of this business, finance, marketing knowledge that I've acquired, and bring it to a more old-fashioned book industry. So like you alluded to, for our big book launch in New York City, we really bootstrapped the events. I pitched women-owned brands to sponsor the event, which were really aligned with the female empowerment themes in the novel and women supporting women. And that was just an awesome night where it felt so kind of modern and entrepreneurial. And it's really saying, I'm grateful to my publisher and to the traditional book world for getting me the credibility of the Penguin Random House brand name and distributing it, getting it out all the Barnes and Nobles. There's such value there. But when you look at the market, it's so hard to break in as a first-time author. So a lot of authors kind of think, oh, wow, I got a book deal, and now the finish line is publication day. And once publication day happens, we celebrate, and then I put my feet back and rest, and then I write my next book. The issue with that for me, what I felt like, is that wasn't going to necessarily help me actually break in and start building a name for myself in a way that I could monetize, not beyond the book, but with speaking events, with coaching, with these other pillars of my business as an author. So I felt like if I were content just having my writing being my side hustle and working, a corporate job in the day, I don't think I would have tried to bring this authorpreneurship lens, but because I really wanted to align them and to build something that, you know, really was going to be sustainable and energizing for a career, I think it's hugely empowering. And I love, you know, working with other authors and aspiring authors to say, yes, we're going to work on your storytelling. Yes, we're going to work on your writing. And we're going to say, how are you planting the seeds? How are you sowing in your terminology? So later we can reap the benefits of, you know, your brand building and your marketing strategy. And the way we've done it with The Heart of the Deal is really in this grassroots way. So partnering with all kinds of universities, women in business organizations, you know, co-working spaces, yoga studios, and bookstores and book clubs and all of that, but really planting all these different seeds so that it can be this virtuous cycle where you have to be known and you have to be out there. And the risk is, if you don't wear your business hat and if you don't bring those business skills to the table, unless you basically win the lottery when it comes to books, you're not going to just make it on your own. You'll just kind of, you know, you make very little royalties from this. It's not a way to sustain yourself really from a financial point of view, or just from a, just a career standpoint of really how you actually make a career out of writing. It requires so many business skills, the brand partnerships, the sales and marketing, event planning, all this stuff that I did not necessarily think about in the early days, but I'm so glad I had my business experience. And that's why people say, oh, you're a writer, you're an author. It's like, well, my writing is a very small section of the day. Maybe I write for 3 hours a day, and the rest of my day I'm doing, you know, all of the basically logistics of running a startup, it feels like.
No, it's true in a sense, and I think your brand is coming out there. I think people are getting to know you. You've spoken on TEDx conferences, so phenomenal, very, very cool. You've been featured on media, from Business Insider to many others in a way. So the story is something that I would say, as you know, as we kind of agreed on the terminology, sowing kind of the future successes and the future opportunities from this career as an author, which is so forward thinking, that is so telling that you are a business and finance person. And it's so and inspiring for those to really see that it's not just about hitting the milestone. It's about what can you do with the book when it's out? What can you do with the kind of resources, the doors it opens up, the opportunities that are there? And I think that I've been guilty in the past, and I think many people are guilty of reaching one milestone and then being, phew, that's done. What do we do now, that we don't utilize the thing that we have for kind of like the future of what we want to achieve? So definitely a page that we should take out of your book, pun intended, and definitely something that I think a lot of us need to learn from in a way, and it's very, very valuable to think about. One last thing. Sorry.
I was going to jump in just one more point on that. I'm still candidly in, I call it like the data point collection phase too, where I wanted to give myself kind of a full 6 months after I quit my Goldman job to say, okay, how do I really let myself say yes to projects, just collect all this information, see what's working. I have my book, my TED Talks going live tomorrow, fingers crossed. I'll share the link. And just all these other, ways I'm speaking at universities, starting coaching. But rather than having to put the pressure on yourself of saying, okay, the book is done, how do we, reach this goal or monetize, generate this income, next month? I'm giving myself this space. And I think that's hugely important for authors, for business people, just to let ourselves learn, let ourselves be lucky, and let ourselves have that ability to pivot and see what's taking off.
No, that is important. It's the data collection phase. You know what? I'm going to add that to my vocabulary, and I'm going to add that to my life plan in a way. Very interesting. One more thing that I did want to talk about as we kind of wind down this conversation is the response from people around you. One of the things that I really liked is when you were sharing in other places I've seen about how it felt as a professional writing a book about love, in a sense, and something that would stereotypically be looked at as a very female, emotional kind of thing. and then you being in this career of finance and all. And there's so many little anecdotes from that which made me really think. And one of it was like how you started in Goldman Sachs in a team that was really you being the only woman among like 20 guys in a sense, and then eventually of course that changed and you were in a better and now they're very much more inclusive and all of that. But just having those experiences and then having to tell everyone, hey, you know what, guys, I'm writing this book, and this is something that traditionally people do not think is a very finance and business world, even though they've obviously never heard your take on being an entrepreneur. But it does cross some stigmas in a way. I personally have been before meeting you involved in being guilty of hiding my receipts of romance novels that I purchased from my finance person. So I'll stop doing that now. I'll own them with confidence because of you. But for something that people often don't talk about, especially in the business and finance world, how did you start bringing this conversation up, and what was the response that you got?
Yeah, I mean, I was nervous to tell people, like I alluded to before, like partially because it was like, oh, do you have one foot out the door because you're spending time writing? And also because, it's a woman's story. It's not some people are saying it's a romance novel. It's really not. It's really fiction because there is a romance through line, but it's much more about self-love, platonic love, figuring life out. But it's interesting. You see how things get pigeonholed. It's like, oh, there's a romantic story in the book, so it must be categorized in romance, which again is putting it in a box. But I really basically didn't tell people until I already I quit. So my bonus came in. I said, okay, that'll cover my living costs for X months. I need to go now because my debut novel is coming out in a few months. And they're like, wait, what? What's going on?
Did this happen?
Like they kind of didn't know how to respond at first because it was so unusual. Like I don't think they had been in that situation before. But to their credit, like my Goldman Sachs colleagues were so happy for me, so supportive. Men and women getting behind it, support. They're having me back to talk with the interns next month. They've given me awesome PR. They have really, I don't know if looking back, I'm like, oh, was I wrong to be nervous about that? Or maybe I just did it at the right time. Maybe I actually needed the book to be out there and something they could read and hold for kind of that conversation to be had. And so I'm hopeful that the book can really like shed light on just the female experience, being a 20-something on Wall Street, and just like for male colleagues to have more compassion for their female colleagues and inclusivity and all of that. Like I'm grateful so far for the way that conversation is coming about. But definitely I was nervous and kind of thinking, oh, does this, one, close the door on my going back into a more traditional finance job? Well, do people not want me back because they think now I'm this modern love writer and that's, not super aligned with the Wall Street image? But ultimately, I think it speaks to when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, when you treat people well and you have good relationships, people do get behind you and support you. And they saw in me that this was lighting me up and this is what I had to be doing. And I had been there long enough that, I really had a lot of mentors and advocates and people who were very much, not just rooting for me to fail, quite the opposite, really trying to set me up to succeed. But I also think like when you're the first one doing it, it's kind of, if someone else does it now, it's like, oh, I'll talk to them. I'll help them through it. We'll have this community. It felt to me like I was very much going into uncharted territory. But like you said, like so many people on Wall Street and in finance actually love creative writing and actually love writing poems or short stories or novels. And now so many people have reached out. We're becoming like this community. And I'm so excited to see how it can change the narrative for, what it means to, I guess, like bring your full self to work or just be a full human and embracing all of these different parts of you without feeling embarrassed by them. Because I did feel embarrassed.
No, I think a very needed conversation for a lot of people, as you said, who are in love with the writing, are in love with the creative world, and at the same time feel this need to go into the business and finance world, or they're there and they do love it, but they need to balance both and explore both sides in a sense. And I guess as we wind down, my final question before I release you back to your adoring fans to go for your book tours and all of that, my final question would be for any other student out there, male or female, finance or not, who has this love for the world of writing, for the world of being an author. It's not an easy journey, definitely, as we can see from your story. What would you tell them to do? What's your advice for them? Because again, a lot of the ones that I know are in Penn who have this kind of pull the other way into the world of finance, and you've done both in a sense. So you're the most well equipped to essentially tell us what we should be doing or what we should be thinking about. So what are your final words of wisdom for this crowd of people who are stepping into the world, balancing all of these different things in their heads?
So I would say, one, finish a first draft. So whatever it is, whatever type of writing you want to do, just get something down that's a first draft. And it's so much easier to then go back and work on it and revise and pitch it once it's out there. But I think a lot of times we can almost get stuck saying, oh, I want to write, I want to do this, but I'm not. And we can make excuses out to wazoo, whether we're working intense jobs or have family obligations. Like, everyone has their time pulled in a million directions. If you really care about it and love it as much as you say you do, then you're going to be able to, maybe it won't happen in a few months, but over the course of a year, like, carve out that time, get the first draft done. And that gives you a starting point. And just the second piece to end on, I think it's really, embracing, kind of like I alluded to before, but embracing these very different sides of you. Understand how your more business career will actually make you a better writer. From the stories you're collecting, the experiences you're seeing, you have a different glimpse on the world. And great writers are just able to articulate and observe the world and with such an interesting view. So that gives you a real competitive strength. And then on the flip side, your being a writer will actually, if you can harness some of that and bring your creativity into your day job, and just try to push the bounds a little bit. I definitely, the times I did that and I pushed more and I really let my author side come in at work was really successful. So I think it's embracing those differences and seeing how one can lift up the other, rather than the narrative that we tell ourselves of, oh, I can't be an author because I have this demanding full-time job. And we kind of think it's this binary thing. We have to choose one or the other. And again, not saying it's easy, not saying it'll happen overnight, but just get down to it. And if I can be a resource along the way, I hope that you will reach out as well.
Yeah. Beautiful. And I think if I know another author or a aspiring poet who's in the finance world as well, who's a character in your book. So please go and get The Heart of the Deal. Beautiful book. Read it if you can, and remember the amazing person behind the book, in a sense, who made it possible. So we'll drop the links in the comment section and in kind of the description below. Make sure you guys check it out. And honestly, you have been phenomenal to talk to. I have learned so much, and I feel much more excited about where my life is headed, no longer calculating backwards after the read and the conversation. Yeah. So thank you so much for being on the show and for sharing this with us. And I really do think it's going to make a difference in the world of all of these excited authors, finance professionals, men, women alike. And I thank you for following your heart and inspiring the rest of us to do the same.
Thank you so much, Harsha. It's been such a pleasure.
All right. And with that, I guess our show for today has come to a close. Thank you once again to our audience for joining us today. If you enjoyed today's session, make sure you let us know below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff. And at the same time, make sure you join us next Thursday at 10 p.m. ET as well for another session of Changing Reality. And with that, we'll be signing off. Bye.
You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world. Only on WQHS Radio.